Being an apprentice. I mean, we hear so much about apprentice nowadays. Being an apprentice is a person who's willing to go through the learning that's necessary, develop the skills that's necessary, get comfortable with being uncomfortable for a period of time, right?
Exactly.
Just doing these things, right?
I often say to people here, when you think about wanting to apprentice with someone, you always want to apprentice with the best, the top of the top. And I go, of course you would, and that's excellent. But here's the thing you often forget. The person who's in that position, what would they want in an apprentice? And that's where many of us fall down. You'd want someone who's an avid learner. You would want someone who shows up. You would want someone who is always watching and observing you and then putting what they see into practice. And the benefit of that is that over a period of time, the apprentice gets the reputation of the person they're apprenticing with. I started to realize, okay, I need to start taking note of what other people are doing who are different from me. If someone doesn't struggle in an area where I struggle, I want to start watching and asking them what they think that's different from me. Let yourself take note of what people are excellent at. Admittedly is different from easily. Are you willing to do the sacrifice? Often I'll ask people when they're frustrated, am I helping you quit or am I helping you move through? Which one am I doing?
Woo! You gotta say that again.
In a business of duplication, you better learn it, you better watch it to teach it, and then you better be teaching it or there will be no duplication. Show up because you're a leader and leaders always show up. And you will always grow into the things you commit to. Well, that takes care of a whole lot of coaching, right? Robert Kiyosaki in the book The Business School says if you want to make money, be a leader. Okay? And that means showing up way beyond what you feel like, right? And if you want to make a lot of money, create more leaders. Educate expectations. To do this business, it is very different from anything else you've approached. You can come from any background. Some are going to be book smart. Some are going to be street smart. Some are just going to have a lot of heart. Some are going to have a lot of talent that's undiscovered. Some are going to have a lot of talent that's going to hang them up because it takes heart to release your talent. And the thing that people won't do is apprentice. I always tell people when I'm interviewing them, you have the opportunity here to apprentice at a very high level. We will show you every single thing that you need to learn. And we will do it in front of you continuously. And I always tell people it's kind of like Montessori learning. I always say I could get a bunch of 5-year-olds at the top of this company quicker than you guys. Because they're so much more coachable. So much more open. If you have the ability to apprentice at a very high level, and it's Montessori learning. Understand Montessori learning is different from you have to learn this, and then you have to move on to the next grade, but they kind of take the kindergartners through 6th graders, and you can learn anything you want. And anybody could be your teacher. Do you realize that in every area of your life, whatever it is that you may not be great at, someone else who may struggle in another area may be great where you aren't. And it doesn't matter what their experience is. Jerry Clark has a new series called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. It's interviews with all different people. And I said to Jerry, I bet people listen to that series where you've got interviews with everybody. Jeff Combs and all these different people. How much you want to bet that people take notes on what they already agree with? How many of you guys realize that what you agree with obviously isn't the problem? What is the point of taking notes on what you already agree with? That's not what's missing. Now you need to go home and listen to all your CD sets again. And you need to take note on all the stuff that you didn't agree with, the stuff you ignored the first time, because that's the deal. Wow, my new CD sets, I get a whole nother round. Cool. That's a whole other perspective. When you have the invitation to apprentice at a high level, you're not limited to whoever your upline is. Do you realize that your resources are everybody? One of the things that I started studying when I really wanted to change the outcomes of my life was I started to realize that isolation was my first biggest enemy. And when I started to recognize that, I started to realize, okay, I need to start taking note of what other people are doing who are different from me. If someone doesn't struggle in an area where I struggle, I want to start watching and asking them what they think that's different from me. And it was little things I didn't have to ask. How many of you guys realize a lot of times you don't know what question to ask? So if you start just setting in your mind, you know what? If they're getting a different outcome in anything, I'm going to start taking note. Again, you're in a business where people are going to come from all walks of life, having all different struggles. Let yourself take note of what people are excellent at. So it was very simple things that I started to clue in on. Like one day, my cousin called me because a woman that he was in love with, they were going to take some time apart. And he called me and said, can we just spend the weekend together? I don't need to talk or anything. I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I want to do this. But I was wondering if we could just spend the weekend together. I didn't want to be alone. Of course, you're all a giver, right? You guys are all givers. Oh, sure, I'll help you. When I got off the phone, remember, I was starting to take note of what people do that's different from me. I hung up the phone and I thought, what a concept. I normally say, whoa, you need to be alone. And when you're fine, then you can be around people again. So I thought, what a concept. Having a difficult time, call a friend. Oh, that's different. I'm serious. I took note going, wow, I would never do that. People always ask, how do you change your life? It's not usually the big things. It's usually little things. You have to look at what were the beginning stages that expose people to stuff that you never get exposed to. So I remember the next time when I was having a tough time, and I remember thinking, I remember that. Do something different. I had a really good friend. We used to spend time together all the time, but I never ever spent time that was spontaneous, and never if I didn't feel like I was worthy of spending time with someone. So I remember calling, hello, Ron? Yeah, Artemis, how you doing? Good. What's up? Well, I was wondering if I could come over. Sure. Oh, great. Cool. Hey, that worked. I'm serious. This is how it felt when you start making changes in areas. People were looking at the big stuff, and sometimes it's the simple things. This was a letter I got from this young 18-year-old man. I thought it would be a good idea to get some feedback from another successful person concerning my progress. I hope it's not a problem. I know that you are a very busy woman, so I'll be brief. This is another thing many adults don't know how to do because they're into their story as to why they can't succeed. See, he doesn't spend any time there. He spends no time on all the reasons why what he's about to say is the reason why it can't be overcome. How many of you guys get emails from your downline or have ever written one yourself? Do you see, I'll be brief. Let me get to the point of what I want, where I want to go. Doesn't matter where I am and why I'm stuck. He doesn't even spend any time there. None. Let me just be real brief. I believe in the power and the potential of this business. Well, there's another difference. How many people do you have in your business that aren't yet convinced of what Mark just spent a lot of time telling you? They haven't done their research as to what the alternatives are or clearly looked at the alternatives. If you really realize that the 40-year plan, even in a good job, if you talk to a lot of multiple six-figure income earners, they will tell you they still don't have the quality of life and time that they're looking for. You become convinced if you'll do your research. Many of us don't do that. And face it, go down the road till you're convinced that you are really proud that you do have the aspirin for their headache. I'm serious. If you aren't there yet and you're still a little ashamed, go down the road as far as you need to. I believe in the power and potential of this business, and I know that eventually, as I continue to work it, that I will see results. That's another difference. But I have to admit that I'm a little concerned with my results so far, which is nothing. This is nothing. He's only been in the business 2 months, so I'm thinking, wow, I was concerned about my results at 1.5 years, which was nothing. So he's doing great, no problem. So I want to be realistic with myself. This is very key. Many of us are not realistic, and I'm going to share with you why we're not realistic, even when we think we're being realistic. So remember this. I want to be realistic with myself because I have only been in the business for 2 months, but I still feel like I should have some type of results by now. Do you notice how open he is to the fact that I feel like I should, but maybe I'm fine. I'm just checking in with someone else who's successful because I'm not going to go far down the road of disappointment. I might be fine. I just don't know. So I'm smart enough to check in. How many of you guys realize there are people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s that don't check in and go way down the road of disappointment without ever checking in? Okay? So he says, but I still feel like I should have some type of results by now. I don't know if I'm not working my business right or not. I don't know if I sound as young as I am when I make calls so people don't take me seriously, or if the fact that I don't have a toll-free number yet or what. I'll continue to work my business and I will be successful, but if it's not too much trouble, I'm asking for some honest feedback. I've been on many training calls and I've gotten very comfortable with my script and how I should present myself, and I believe that I'm working my plan. Every now and then something comes up and knocks me off a bit, but for the most part, I believe that I'm being very consistent. However, as Paul always tells me, it's also about the timing in that person's life, and I'm looking for people like myself who want a different lifestyle. So I'm not discouraged or anything. I just would like to know if there's more that I should be doing. Now, let me ask you a question, because this guy can't afford his 800 number yet, and he can't afford any leads. He is cold calling. Did you hear that in there? The reason I'm not going to be able to succeed is I'm young and I don't have any money and I don't have an 800 number, so it's probably not going to work. Do you hear any of that? There is no victim in this at all. Doesn't this wake you up and kind of smack you upside your head? Because this is what you're looking for, is someone who they're not caught in their story at all. What is the probation period that you have for your business? Do you realize that we've been groomed and steeped in some thinking that is so unconscious that you don't even realize you're coming against it? I have to constantly teach people, when you are disappointed, you have to look at what you are evaluating and see if you are evaluating something that is valuable. If I said, I don't think I'm going to make it in network marketing because I can't swim, obviously no connection, correct? But do you understand that for many of us, that is exactly what some of our thinking is like as to why we're not going to make it, but we don't realize it's just as disrelated. On most jobs, 30, 60, 90 days, correct? Probation? Because they are used to having to show competence within that period of time. Or at least, even if they didn't show it outwardly, they have to know it inwardly. Usually people do not jump in way over their head if they don't think they can pull it off, because the fear of looking foolish or losing a job is too great. So people don't make quantum leaps usually in jobs. Very few. Do you understand? I want to talk to you not only from the perspective of your own thinking, but when you're coaching. When people call you and they are frustrated or they don't think they can do it, you should be thinking, what are they evaluating? Because a lot of times you go right into the story. The leads aren't doing good, or I'm not doing well, or I'm not getting callbacks, and you start coaching them on that and go, wait. Notice how this young man, I've only been in the business a couple of months, and I'm a little concerned about my results, as they've been nothing, but I want to check in, because maybe that's normal. Even if you're having success, it is 2 years before your head is screwed on straight in this industry. It is a completely different industry. When you go to college, for those of you guys that might have gone to college, did anybody worry after the first year if they were going to have a job? No, because you don't even need to think about it for 3 more years. This business, because it does your training and you're also on the job, many times people don't evaluate the two. In your first couple of years, you are apprenticing. If you're wise, you will continue to be looking to people who are ahead of you, so that you are always apprenticing. But how many of you guys do not have that mindset? You have the mindset of go get the knowledge and then I have to go off by myself. I have a lot of people that will often reflect this perspective. I'm learning it and then I'll go off and I'll do it and I'm fine. And I'm like, you know what? You don't understand that you're in a business of duplication. People say, I'm going to practice this till I'm comfortable and then I'll come out and do it. And I'm like, why do that when the entire business has to be done out in the open anyway? Why go off and get comfortable by yourself? Since this is not an alone business, that's a waste of time. Because then you have to come out and get nervous. Why don't you just get nervous and get it over with? It's not like that's a moment in time that you go out in front of people, right? So why go get comfortable with a whole process that isn't really a part of your business? That's what I tell people. Don't bother. Let's just do it. Because you're rarely going to prospect alone. You're almost always going to be training and teaching, bringing in new people and doing this in front of people. So don't take that time to do that. What are people disappointed with? What are they evaluating? I want you to always be thinking in terms of that as a coach, so you don't always go right to the solution. You know how women always say, I wasn't looking for a solution, I just want him to listen, and the guys always want to solve it. As coaches in this business, be careful that you don't go to always solve something without listening, because if you go to their evaluation and deal with getting that appropriate, you won't have a million things that they're coming at you if you go to the core what the problem is. If they need to reset something, go reset it and then go in and deal with the particular issue. But if you only deal with the particular issue as a coach, you'll get worn out. How many of you guys who are coaches, you understand exactly what I'm saying? You're like, go in and go to the root, because for many people, the reason they fail in this industry is they have so many things they're evaluating from somewhere else, and nobody helps them realize, okay, that's great. The fact that you can't swim is important if you're going to do water sports, but it's got nothing to do with network marketing. And many of the things, just because you learned it in business, doesn't mean it's going to be appropriate for you here. Another way to look at this when you're thinking about, whether or not you're going to do it, which many people are still evaluating. The reason why they're evaluating whether or not they're going to do it is because they don't know if they can. I'll try it for 6 months and we'll see. And any of us who have been in it, it's like, don't try, you're going to be apprenticing. You'll do it till you get it. So what if somebody did it quicker than you? The point is, if you know the 40-year plan isn't working, and no matter what you do, that's not going to work, why go back there? If you know that's not an option, then the only option is to learn it, right? It's your only option. This was a great analogy. This was a dental hygienist, and she said, there was a woman sitting in my chair, and she was saying the doctor was telling me that I could get braces, and I don't know if I should get it because the discomfort, and they look funny, and, all these different things. And the hygienist, after she got done, she said, you know what? Do you want straight teeth? And the woman said, yes. And the dental hygienist said, you know what? 3 years is going to go by one way or another. And the only thing you need to think about is at the end of 3 years, do you want crooked teeth or do you want straight teeth? And if you want straight teeth, get it done. At the end of 40 years, do you or don't you want to be wondering if you're at Walmart? If you don't, then pay your dues. I have a gentleman on my team that's been with me for a while, and recently he said he wasn't sure if he wanted to do business. He thinks he just wants to be a regular distributor. And I said, you know what, this is interesting for me because you have done a lot of reading, so you are intellectually, you've done a lot of the journeying of absorbing information here. And two things that you absolutely know are that no matter what you did, it's going to be a 3 to 5 year time frame, right? I mean, not only network marketing, but if you're going to accelerate your financial world, it's going to be 3 to 5 years. Has that not been a consistent thing you have heard or read business people tell you when they start their own business? They don't even expect a break-even mark till 3 years to 5 years. Okay? So you know that that's kind of like very common. And I said, but the point is it's 3 to 5 years of sacrifice. When were you planning on starting that? If you just thought it was 3 to 5 years and only going to do it if it's comfortable, that's one point. And I said, and the second thing that you read no matter what is that it takes team. I don't mean the team that you build. I mean team as in your mentors from all different levels. Like I said, your mentors may be places you don't expect it, but it's very important that you understand that, okay? Do you or don't you, at the end of 3 to 5 years, want crooked or straight teeth? If the answer to that is yes, then let's just get it done. Someone else said to me recently that one of the people on my team, another physician, should talk to this physician because he looked like he made that transition very easily. And I said, he didn't make it easily. He made it committedly. Just because someone is still there, it's so easy after the fact when you listen to someone talk about something to say, well, that was easy for them. It wasn't easy. It was committedly. How many of you guys understand that it is very different? Again, somebody who ends up with straight teeth, it's not because they didn't go through the process. Committedly is different from easily. Are you willing to do the sacrifice? If it's common knowledge that it's 3 to 5 years of sacrifice, then are you willing to do it or not? You might as well get that done. And if it's common knowledge that it takes team, connections to people whose thinking are complementary or different or have drawn them forward, these are important things if you're going to be a good apprentice. Every time you are mastering something, will you allow yourself to know that nothing fails like success? I was talking to my team about somebody, if you wanted to really be great at basketball and you wanted to be able to throw a free throw where you knew that one shot always went in. Now, it's different if you just want to be able to throw a free throw and know that it gets in every once in a while. But it is a lot more practice to know that on command you can do it. And then isn't it very different when you have to do it in competition? So if you're ever in competition, many times if you're working with a coach will put you in competition and not care how you place. Because the point of putting somebody in competition the first time is purely so they get the sense of competition. How many of you guys understand that and as coaches can share with people that when they get into this business, sometimes you're throwing in the midst of something and what are they judging? Probation. I have to be good right out of the gate, right? What's their evaluation? And your evaluation is, I'm just trying to throw you in the mix of something new. First time they're learning a skill. First time you put them up to just share a success. First time you have them doing training. And they're trying to look at, am I doing it perfectly? And you're like, I'm just throwing you in the mix. You have to help people to know how to judge or they are very resistant to come forward. Are you with me? If you give people a proper image, which is what most people are missing, they will enter more easily. And that's one of the things you have to look at, where people are judging and where's the value system come from, and then how can you help them bridge over to the values over here so that they don't misjudge. The rules we have for things are often what keeps you from moving forward. The best example of this I can give you is a #1 recording artist who his best goal, his #1 thing that he wanted in life was success. And #2 is adventure. Cool. Those are good things to go for, right? Nobody can say anything wrong with that. His #1 thing he did not want in his life was failure. And his #2 thing was depression. Those are good things to stay away from. So that looks like a good value system, doesn't it? He wants success and adventure. He doesn't want failure and depression. Looks good. So if you were only on the outside, you'd go, he's cool. Let's look at his rules. His rules for being successful is that every song he writes has to be #1. What are the chances of that? 0. What are the chances then that he is always going to be a failure? 100%. So if you do not look at the rules that people have, you can often go, oh, that's great. You sound, looks good. Okay? This guy had 3 #1 songs, yet he was always a failure and in depression. Do you see how you rig your own game? Think about yourself for this part of your life and that next level. What are the rules that you have? What disappointments are you facing continuously? Usually there are several incidences that are recurring, but a particular rule system that you keep violating. What is a constant reoccurring disappointment in your business? And then try and think about what your rules are so that you can go, wait a minute, let me check in with someone who's a little bit more experienced to see if my rules here. That was what was so wise about that young 18-year-old man, right? He's checking in early in his business to say, is this even appropriate that I'm thinking about these things? You maybe need to say, what was I disappointed with? What was the rule that was being violated? I should be successful already. Let's see if that's true. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And as a coach, this is very, very important so you can help people. A lot of times people go, well, I don't have the confidence or I don't feel like I can lead yet. And I'm like, you know what? You have to stop showing up based on how you feel. If you woke up every morning and said, do you feel like going to work? How many of you guys would have gone? Did you ever have that as a rule? I have to feel like going before I get out of bed, take a shower, and show up. No, you never had, do I feel like it, as a rule. The rule was you get up and do it, and as you did it, you got better at things, and you got rewarded for things, and you got comfortable with things. Never was it based on feelings. So what is up in free enterprise where you don't show up? Show up because you're a leader and leaders always show up. And you will always grow into the things you commit to. Well, that takes care of a whole lot of coaching, right? Level 1 that I found with people is oftentimes level 1 is you're very nervous and self-conscious about things. Okay, so let them know. Level 1 is don't worry about it. You are self-conscious. Level 2 is that you begin to get committed and consistent. In the beginning, you resist the stuff that you feel uncomfortable with. And again, you have all these rules that are being violated, like I need to be good out of the gate, or these people aren't going to respect me, or I'm going to lose face, or you realize all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. That's why people call you 3 days later and go, I quit. A month later, I quit. Right? So this is it. First, you're nervous and self-conscious, and then you've got to decide you're showing up no matter what, just like you did for your job, and you will become consistent out of commitment. Level 3 after that is that honestly, if you show up and you are consistent and committed, you do become invisible to the process. Somebody recently asked me, who's been in network marketing for a year and a half, he said, I mean, is it just one of those things that you're just miserable and you hate it all the way to the top, but you like succeed finally? I remember thinking like that too. And in fact, that's how I started my business. I started my business, number 1, thinking it was sales. And I remember saying exactly this. She brought this back and I was like, oh man, you really will get to the point where you're invisible to the process. And you know what? That's when you start hearing so many things that make it fun. It is so much fun once you're invisible. How many of you guys are at the stage where you've become invisible to the process? Because it's only a handful of people that have been committed and consistent long enough. And I'll tell you why most people never get here. After having people send daily emails where they talk about their number of live calls and their number of voice drops that they've left, and I've taught my team to not talk about all the reasons why it didn't work. Nobody cares, and it's a waste of time. If today didn't work for you, what needs to happen differently tomorrow? Right? That's it. The rest of it doesn't really matter. It's just a lot of time-consuming stuff. So after getting these daily emails from like hundreds of people and just kind of sifting through and watching, I finally had the team and I said, you know what? Many of you guys, if I was trying to teach you to ride your bike, are riding so slow that you are all scarred up and you are sure that riding your bike is about skinning your knees. If you ride a bike slow enough, can you get anywhere? And is it enjoyable? No, and even if you got going, if in your mind you're thinking, geez, I might get hit by a car, I might get killed, I might ruin my outfit, I might scratch my knees, I might scratch my elbows, I might really break a leg. Would you enjoy it even after you got going if that was what you were thinking while you were doing it? Can you see how people do this? This is the way they do their business. They do it so slow that they never actually experience the business. They never. So I said, if you guys are doing less than 10 live contacts a day, you have not started yet. If you give yourself 1,000 calls that you're going to do, and you do them one a day, in 3.5 years, you won't be here. But secondly, you'll get zero distinctions. Every day, you will just spend the majority of time being nervous and then having a miserable moment of experience and then spend the rest of your day wishing tomorrow didn't come. The only way you get distinctions is when you dive in. And so if you really want to know what prospecting is about, do a lot quickly. If you're doing less than 10 live contacts a day, all you are doing is tormenting yourself and concluding that torment is what the business is about. So I said, you are learning something every day. What are you learning though? So I just finally said to him, if you're doing less than 10 live contacts, we're not even started yet, okay? So you call me when you've started. Until then, feel free to listen to as many training calls as you want. But all of you who are doing less than 10 live contacts, we're not coaching you because you don't need any coaching. You just stay on the calls for as long as you want, but you haven't started your business. So once we're over that, we're working. And I'm talking part-time people, okay? Here's what I did. I did a 30-minute challenge in front of my team to show them that here's the deal. If you want to learn something, you need to get on the bike and feel the breeze, okay? Yeah, we need to get in there and have some fun. So I said pace and tone have everything to do with it. So I'd get these things where these people are part-time. They're saying they got 4 hours in the business. And they say they did 3 live contacts and 5 voice drops. And I'm like, come on, that's not even 10 minutes. But, I think they get out of bed and 9 a.m. they decide they're going to start. And somewhere around 11, they decide they're not doing it anymore. And to them, that's a 12-hour day. I'm like, okay, no, just because you avoided it for all that time isn't doing it. So I said, okay, I'm going to do a 30-minute challenge in front of you guys. And I did it for about 4 weeks, and I will continue to do it in the new year. Well, I just did 30 minutes of calls, and I said, I'm going to pretend you guys aren't here, okay? I'm muting you out, and I'm just going to do calls in front of you. And here's the results so that you guys can know how to measure your day. This was consistent. Every 10 minutes, there were 4 to 6 calls. I'm not talking about wrong numbers or busy signals. I'm talking about either a voice drop where somebody wasn't there and I left a message, or I left a message with a live person, or I spoke with someone. Every 10 minutes, there were 4 to 6 calls. In an hour, there were 3 to 7 live calls with someone I actually prospected, and there were somewhere between 10 and 14 voice drops. Now, can't you just measure out the rest of your day from knowing that? At the minimum, you got 13 calls in a half an hour. That was more than 50% of the people were doing all day. So I said, can you understand why we haven't started the business? Because none of you have said you're spending 30 minutes. Most of the people on the team had said they were at least 2 hours in the business. And even full-time people were doing this. So I said, let me just help you so that you can work out even the number of leads. If you are part-time and you say you've got more than an hour a day, which most of them did, then you should be doing 15 to 20 live contacts a day. And I showed them how to do it in 30-minute increments. Sometimes I will break it down for people so that they can become aware of their patterns. Okay? As a coach, try this if somebody is really saying, I just can't. Go, great. What I want you to do is every 15 minutes, I want you just to note what you're doing, and you will find immediately you don't even need to coach them. They'll coach themselves. They start to see, I did all these other things. If you're full-time, 30 to 40 live contacts a day should be what you are doing. And if you need to know how many leads you need to work with, think about it. It's 4 to 6 calls every 10 minutes and 30 minutes. It was about 15 to 20 calls. So I might need in an hour 25 to 30 leads to call. It is not that difficult to figure out what it is that you're doing, but you can see how people completely under-resource themselves and then get discouraged. So you really want to benchmark for people and for yourself how to dive into the game in a way that you're actually riding the bike. Here was a great contrast for me when I worked with this woman who just loved the business. Now, she had spent 19 years in insurance. So she said, if any of you want to really go quickly in this business, go do 19 years of insurance and this will be a breeze. Okay? But if you haven't, I watched that I took a lot of things seriously. I mean, when I was working, I was working. But she never took any incident with a rep, with a prospect, or anything seriously. She was convinced of the value of what she was doing. So no one person who was a nut stopped her. Okay? I remember some uppity up guy, we used to have something that we said in our script that said, would you take 60 seconds to listen to something? And he said, sure, I'll give you a minute to impress me. And she said, well, you only had 15 to impress me and you didn't do a very good job. See ya. And then she giggled as she hung up the phone. I'm like, okay, there's something different about how she's thinking about this, okay? Because I would be intimidated, right? In the beginning when people hang up with her, she's just having fun, you know? And the gentleman who did mentoring did something really fun with a guy who said in the email, sure, I'll give you 20 minutes. You can call me. And I'm sure in 20 minutes you should be able to convince me of the value of your business. And he wrote back, since you believe that you are too busy, let me save you 19 minutes and 30 seconds and I'll pass on our conversation. Oh, yeah. Send these comments so that the team can realize your job isn't to convince these people. How many of you guys have people that are asking, but how do I handle this? And how do I handle that? And how do I handle this? And do you realize that when you have this big picture, none of that matters? How do you handle a jerk? See ya. In all their myriad of different appearances, the way you deal with it is see ya and giggle. Okay? Like, well, that's easy. Instead of trying to remember how to overcome 50 objections. Forget that. Because how many of you guys, when you overcome objections of someone who really has no interest, it ever works? No, it's just a frustration. And so teach people to do that. What are they taking too seriously? What are you taking too seriously that is keeping you from taking the big picture of what is here for financial freedom seriously? Pick your business partners like you pick your best friends. Have any of you guys ever sat next to someone or met someone that there is zero connection and gone, geez, what are we going to do to become best friends? We have nothing in common. We don't even really like each other. I'm really uncomfortable with you, but we've got to become best friends. We struggle to be your best. It happens naturally, does it not? This is how you find your business partners. The way you find your best friends, there's a click. And then the openness is there to make the exchanges. Just because you've met someone you've clicked with does not mean you still don't need to learn a lot, right? You still need to do all the exchange, but the door is open for the exchange to occur. You don't sit next to someone that there's a freezing little bar and you try and figure out, oh, how do I? No, right? Help your people to have images when they're struggling to go, that's not what we do, okay? We do not struggle to find best friends. You look and you know who you clicked with. And then you go sit down and you enjoy them and ask them, right? And you may have someone that you click with and they don't click with you. Do you cry about it? No. You don't even notice it. That's what prospecting is. That's what you do. You touch base with people. You let your life intersect with them and you just see. Is the door mutually open for us then to exchange many things that would need to happen to apprentice someone at a high level? If it is, great. If it's not, see ya. This business is about duplication. I find for a lot of business people and professionals, this is a big hump. I mean, they know they came here for that, but they work in their mindset alone. And then they want to teach everyone else to work alone. And in a business of duplication, the Montessori image is much more real of how it's going to happen. There's a lot of things that you need to teach people that they need to watch and absorb in the right time. And many things that you're going to teach them, they're not going to know how to ask. They need to be around, and I don't mean physically, I mean they need to be working with a team and different things so that they can absorb things that you wouldn't know they're in the moment to hear it. Duplication is the key to your business. So I find this very interesting. People will go and master a skill and then go, well, I don't need to show up anymore. And I'm like, whoa, you need to be in one of 3 states at all times if you understand this is a business of duplication. You are either learning something, watching it to teach it, or you are teaching it. So you are always a leader and a learner at the same time. I used to watch the gentleman who used to give our presentations when we used to have to go do them instead of them being on the internet, and I used to watch all the time. How did he articulate something that made people go, oh, I could do that? Instead of, oh, that's too hard. He was a master at this. And other people would go, do we have to listen to this presentation again? I'm like, are you crazy? You are watching a master communicator. Do you not understand what you're watching? Once you have heard something for your knowledge, you're no longer watching it from that perspective anymore. But I watch a lot of people shut down. Oh, I already know that. I'm like, if you can't duplicate it, you don't stop watching. You watch it first to get it, and this is where a lot of professionals give up right there. I've got it. I'm off. Get your butt back until you're the one doing it. Whoever the coach is or the person who is performing something, since you're in a business of duplication, they should be the first one to leave the table. Until you are doing what they do, you should be there watching it until you've replaced them. How many of you guys realize that people don't think like that and you have to teach them that? I'm the first one that needs to leave the table. If I'm working with you and your team until I'm gone, don't you dare even think about being gone. Okay? Don't even think about it. This is a business education. I don't need to teach myself. So you are either watching to learn, okay? And once you have watched and got it like you understand it, then you need to master whatever that is, and then you need to be watching it from the perspective of teaching it. And it's fun to watch different people because different styles will teach you different things. And then the last thing is, get up there and do it. Because that's how money is made. I interviewed a guy a couple years ago and he said, I built my organization to 5,000 people and then when I tried to retire, the whole thing fell apart. And I said, well, did you build any leaders? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, if you started a traditional business where you were the inspiration, you were the ideas person, you were the reason why people stayed, you were the one that tied the company together, you were the one with the ideas, and your goal was 5 years, and I want to be chairman of the board where someone else is running it, but I want the company to go on, what do you need to replace? Yourself. I said, did you build any leaders? And he said, no. And I said, well, that explains why when you stepped away, they all fell apart. People often don't recognize that that's why this is a walk-away business. Robert Kiyosaki in the book, The Business School, says if you want to make money, be a leader, okay? And that means showing up way beyond what you feel like, right? And if you want to make a lot of money, create more leaders. In every compensation plan, no matter what company you're working with, you must duplicate someone, and then you need to duplicate yourself in many others in some depth so that when you step away, every single thing and function that you're doing, that's why you'll build your business to a certain level of income, whatever it is, and then you may stop recruiting, but you will still keep leading until you've duplicated the leadership and you slowly step out of your business to see if the income remains. If it doesn't, you have not duplicated leadership. Do you realize how key it is to remember that you are always in one of 3 states, and most people don't realize this? And they wonder why their business, number one, they wonder why they don't duplicate. Well, this is easy. Because you went to learn it like a job and then go off and do it when that's not what we do. We duplicate. So you didn't stay for the next stages, which is, I'm glad you learned it, but that doesn't mean you have any idea how to communicate it or any idea how to duplicate it. This is another area where you've got to really educate people. Here's your first stage of things is that they don't protect their time. They're still in the, I don't feel like it, or I'm not comfortable, or I'm not good at it. And you're like, okay, this is the first stage where you start to realize none of that matters. You can't even get to stage 2 where you're reaching your numbers until you've gone by the stage where you're showing up beyond whether you're good, beyond whether you feel like it, beyond whether you believe it's going to work, to get to the next stage where you actually are reaching the number of connections that you're doing every day. There is a database of knowledge that you can tell where people are coming from and what their mindset about life is. But that doesn't happen. You can't learn that from a book. An email like this means A, B, C. You can't learn it like that. Here's the thing that you've got to do. I cannot pass on my belief to you. Hopefully my belief and passion will inspire you to do what I did to get here, because I did not start with this understanding. I can try and study all the quips I want, the great responses, but the bottom line is, if you will prospect like a mad person, massive action, and just interview lots of people and let your life intersect, this is another thing about pace and focus that's different. Even as a new person, how many of you guys were nervous after you got past the I'm not going to avoid it? How many of you guys were still nervous once you got on the phone and did your first 5 or 6 calls, you actually got into a rhythm and did it? And then you're okay. And that's a stage. And then pretty soon, you honestly, believe it or not, you'll actually look forward to prospecting, okay? For those of you that are at that stage, believe it or not, that does come. But here's the thing. It's like going to the gym at the middle stage. You don't want to go, but once you're there, you're really glad you're there. If you do not focus and protect that time, I tell a team, listen, do this 30 minutes where there is no email, no answering of calls, no interruptions, nothing. For 30 minutes you sit there because something unconscious begins to happen. Your unconscious mind actually knows more than your conscious mind. When you don't focus and allow yourself to get into the rhythm of something where you're not thinking, you never allow your unconscious mind to start telling you things. There is something that takes over. Very few people will do this with their prospecting. And if you can teach people early to do this, it doesn't even matter if they're good. They will get into a mode where all of a sudden they'll start hearing stuff and doing things just because out of a gut that they shouldn't have. But believe me, your unconscious mind knows things and has a database about human beings already. And when you've prospected for a year or two, you have a database that kind of tells you, somebody answers the phone, you're like, okay, this is never going to, you just know. How many of you guys realize and already having that happen? You have to teach people to focus, okay, in such a manner that that part of them starts to be experienced by them. You won't feel the breeze of the bike riding until you get going a little bit. So when you're trying to teach people, listen, there are two sides to what you're going to learn here. Part of it is something you are going to try to do, and part of it is something that is going to happen to you and come through you. And that part can't happen if you don't get a little pace going here. You have to teach people this. If that other side of them doesn't kick in, they will never fall in love with this business, and they will never fall in love with the process. How many of you guys realize that this is an area where you really need to make some shifts? Really need to make some shifts in order to have that other part start to kick in, because that's really when it gets to be fun. And in the beginning, as you start to focus, you'll get into that stage. If you've ever sat down where you've prospected for like 20 minutes and you really get in your groove and like 5 hours or 3 hours go by and you didn't even realize it, how many of you guys have done that? Maybe not all the time, but you've had that experience, but you don't know how to bring yourself back to that state frequently, right? That is something that has to happen through realizing, like you go to the gym, listen, I'm going to show up because I'm a leader. If you showed up for your job because the alarm went off and because you'd be fired, then you have to at least expect that you're going to show up for free enterprise. Because obviously that's not going to happen on its own. Once you realize it is not a valuable tool as to whether you feel like it or not, then you can ignore that. But if you don't realize that feeling like it is irrelevant, you're still going to value that and keep having that come up. I didn't feel like it today. I didn't feel like it. I wasn't really comfortable. I wasn't really confident. It's like, okay, would you have showed up for very many things if that was your evaluation? How many of you guys realize there's a lot of stuff you're avoiding because you don't, quote, feel ready, feel it's time, feel comfortable? How many of you guys know that the majority of your business you have avoided because you don't feel something? Your income would be different if you weren't in that stage. If you realize that feeling all of that is normal and no big deal and you still got to do it, you won't spend so much time waiting. It doesn't have to take 10 years for you to get your business going. Level 3, the numbers of follow-ups that you bring every day. We're so task-oriented. Sometimes people get to the point where they're like, sure, I talk to that number of live people every day and still I'm not getting anything. Like, okay, well, let's talk about the next level. Now that you're competent at showing up whether you feel like it or not, and you're competent at doing now level 2, you're competent now at doing the number of live calls every day. The third level here is that can you bring the number of follow-ups that you want to the table? Because that's really the point, the number of people who you interview. And this is where I watch a lot of people give up on their focus again. I've tried to figure out what is different about how I prospect from how some of the team that's gotten to the point where they sound great, but they still don't bring people to the table. And I listened to a gentleman who has really gotten excellent, and I went, here's another good distinction I can give them. He was talking, and at the end he said, well, great, then I'll look forward to talking with you. And I'm like, how quickly can you get to this? Great, I'll look forward to talking to you. It's going to take you 15 minutes to watch that presentation. I'll look forward to talking with you in 30. I'll be expecting your call. I mean, I'm like, in my mind, you absolutely want to talk with me. In my mind, there is not a team of professionals that invest in you beyond what they get from you normally. In my mind, there is no place where you can replace a 40-year income in 3 to 5 years. In 24 months, I went from the bottom to the top. And I'm thinking, man, what an amazing thing that you can do here. And I'm duplicating leaders, and within a couple of more years, gone, and that duplication is there, and it goes on without me. What an amazing thing to be able to do. So when I talk to you, in my mind, absolutely you're going to want to look. Absolutely you'll want to talk to me. Not maybe you'll want to talk to me. So I realize people don't have that image in their mind. How real is it to you that people are desperate, and many of them are just too afraid that they, quote, can't change? You know what? It's amazing to me how many people are on disability. How many of you guys have seen that? You call and they're on disability. And a lot of people are on disability for something that shouldn't disable them. Are you with me? Like my knee. And I'm like, okay, so, and? I just realized in the last couple of weeks, you know why I think a lot of people look toward disability? Because in their mind, that's the only way out. There is no way out. Like, I can't do the other. So the best thing they can look forward to get out of that is like disability is like the big vacation. Even though the compromise is a lower income, because I think they don't believe. Never thought about it that way before. So I've been wondering, why do people settle for a knee disability? I'm like, yeah. I just brought a gentleman onto my team who was in an automobile accident. He was a contractor before, and it was the fault of someone else, and he had to be fused together and a metal bar put in, and he lost most of the strength in his arms, and his doctor said, within a year, you'll have back whatever you're going to have back. And he said, I have very little, so I'm ready to go. He didn't mention anything about disability. He mentioned a physical limitation that is moving him toward a solution of another way that he wants to invest his life. But like that 18-year-old man, there was no, well, you have to understand I'm disabled. You have to understand I have a limitation. Was it. Here's the physical reason why I'm looking. And that was it. There was nothing else in that he said, in what he's doing. So understand the place at which people are coming and their perspective and yours. This is very key. What is your outcome when you get on the phone with people? Are you really convinced? And if you're not, seriously, go interview some people just for the heck of it. Without even thinking about prospecting, have you thought about going up to people to say, hey, how long have you been at your job? And what do you do? And how has your company kept you? That's a great question to ask people. They have no idea how their company kept them because their company didn't keep them. They're just too scared to move. 2 questions that are great if you want to understand why what you do is so valuable. If you're not, don't try and prospect them if you're scared of that. I'm just doing some research. Tell me what you do. How long have you been doing it? And how has your company kept you? And are you making the kind of money you want to make? And that will help you to go, my God, people are miserable. I started asking some questions and I was amazed. One of the questions in our interview used to be, as you think about doing whatever it is you do for the next 5 or 10 years, how does that make you feel? I expected people to have much more variance in their answer. It was so amazing that it has really struck me. The majority of people said, horrible. Couldn't do it. I mean, just like an amazingly strong response, not like maybe it's okay or whatever. And I thought, you know what? But unless you actually face that question every day, which they don't, they will do it for 5 or 10 more years. Now you have to convince yourself with your own research. Hearing this will be in one ear and out the other. So I really challenge you to do whatever it takes for you to understand what most people are facing and that most people end up at their destination out of fear that there is no alternative that they could do. I mean, I stayed in sales for 15 years. Because I thought my only skill was being nice to people. I hated sales from the day I started it, but I never wanted to work 50 weeks a year. So I thought I can get more time off if I can create a result. And I hated it, and every time I'd think, I'd go, I don't have any other skills. I think back now, I'm like, what were you thinking? But I was so afraid, and so every year I'd sit back down, and when I finally quit my job, it was seriously out of starting to have some vision outside, but I had no idea how I was going to do other things. I had no idea whatsoever at all. This is the part that I'm talking about when you're prospecting. I heard this gentleman prospecting. This is, again, when we used to do live presentations. And you used to try and talk to people and have them come see you within 12 to 24 hours. So he was talking to somebody at 11:15. The guy said, I can't come, I have a lunch. And this gentleman said, is it worth $500,000 to you? The guy goes, well, of course not. And he goes, if you knew what I knew, you'd be here at noon. I'll see you. Did the guy show up? Oh, yes, he did. And I thought, oh, man, that's great. But I never had the nerve to say that. How does he have the nerve to say that? So I thought it was great, and I saw that it worked, but I thought, I don't have the nerve to say it. I know what he knows, and now I can say that. I was talking to someone recently, and they were prospecting, and I said, that's a strong candidate. Go get an active no. And then I heard myself say that, and I brought the call off from mute. I was working with that young 18-year-old man. I said, did you guys hear what I just said? When I'm prospecting in front of my team, I try and give them the distinctions because it's not what I do that's different only. It's the way I think about what I do. When they prospect with me and hear 20 calls, no matter what the result is, they're excited. And I'm like, what? We got 4 wrong numbers and 2 doofus faces and, 4 people that we left messages for. Why are you guys excited? Because I'm telling them my mindset. And they're excited. Are you guys having fun? Yeah. So I try and teach them what I'm thinking. When I hear someone sharp on the phone, first of all, the minute the phone is ringing and nobody answers, I immediately go into, let me just listen to what they sound like. Because if there's somebody I want to talk to, that's all I need to know. I'm just looking for who I want to talk to. Okay? So when they answer the phone, and it was a voicemail, and I said, I want an active no. In my mind, you want to talk to me if you knew what I knew. I thought, all right, cool. I want to go after people and say, you owe it to yourself to get an active no. And if you're open and looking, it'll be a yes. Most people really intimidate themselves by comparing themselves instead of incorporating the best of others. Most people try and they don't realize that what you really want to do is watch what other people are excellent at in many areas. I'm not just talking about in this business. If someone has a great mindset no matter what and they're always happy and you're not, I don't care how old they are, figure out the way they think. Oftentimes it's not just what successful people do, it's the way they're thinking, and learn to get next to people who are excellent in areas that maybe are not the most natural to you, and it will make a huge difference. Don't compare yourself. Incorporate the best of other people.
Artemis, on this particular segment here is a lot of key points once again, as usual. And as a matter of fact, there's a word that you had mentioned that I'm not sure if everyone really know. Well, let me be honest with you. I really didn't know it. So
there we go.
Montessori.
Yeah.
Explain that, because you're talking about the concept of Montessori learning. What is that?
My sister was really interested in having her kids have more of an open experience of learning. And so a Montessori school allows, instead of like everybody being in separate grades, they mix the kids of all ages, and they don't really have the topics being all separate. You actually can move around to any table that you want and learn things in any order you want and stay as long as you want. And really in that environment, like a first grader might teach a sixth grader something in certain things, while in another area, the sixth grader teaches the first grader things. And they actually can go at their own pace. So children's avidness for learning can really be met instead of a teacher regulating how fast you learn. And in network marketing, it's very much like that. You're working in a team environment, and you'll be surprised how often people who are new, in fact, I just experienced this past 10 days. I had a group of leaders come in, and some of the ones who were newer actually were far stronger than some of the people who had been in longer. And why was that? Because some of the people who had been in longer had started to believe that their experience was the business. Instead of the newer people actually were still looking at those of us who are successful like you and I, and realizing that their experience was not the business. And it was amazing to me to watch that some leaders had settled in instead of watching you and I were settling into, well, yeah, I know Jerry and Artemis, but my experience is this. Whereas the new people were still very open, going, yeah, I'm experiencing this, but Jerry and Artemis is the way it really is. And that was a very key thing to watch. So in Montessori learning, it's like, keep realizing, listen, you're going to learn from everyone, and keep your world very open. And just remember that you can go to any table and you can go as fast as you want.
Wow. That is powerful. And speaking of going to any table and going as fast as you want, it seems like different people really gather experience to prove that they can do things. And some people gather experience to prove that they can't do things. In other words, some people kind of go through life as a victim. And one of the things that I thought was powerful in this segment is that you read a letter, that this young man, like an 18-year-old guy, actually sent you, and he had no victimitis in there.
Not at all.
It was really just clear of that.
It really is amazing. And you will be so surprised as you work with people how strong that is, because the fear is so great. I had a gentleman who just interviewed with me the other day, and he said, my wife is very skeptical. We had a bad experience, and you're really going to have to sell her hard. And I said, you know what? Here's the thing. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. And that I'm not actually here to sell you on that. I'm here at any point that you decide that you really want your life to move from one level to the other, and you have an openness, that's where I can come in. But if you already have like a whole program as to why it can't change, that's where I become very silent. That's not my job. My job is not to break that through. Your job is to come in with that openness and let the guard down so that the information can go in. Whereas in my first couple of years, maybe I cried so much because I kept trying to think that it was my job to make you want the change.
Wow.
See, it's not my job to make you want the change. It's my job to show you what it would take if you want to change.
Wow. Is that one of the reasons why you mentioned that as coaches, we don't want to be so quick to go and solve something without really listening?
That's
we want to really listen first, right?
That's
because then, we can really see where they are, and if they truly want to go to another level, want to change, like you're talking about.
I mean, you were talking about the other day, and you said, you do have to really kind of know what somebody's outcome is. People said to you, well, isn't there ultimate right and wrong? And you said, well, not really. And then people said, well, Jerry, what about smoking? I mean, everybody knows that's bad for your health. And you said, well, wait a minute. What if someone really wanted to die? but didn't really want to do it in an obvious way. And maybe that's how they didn't take care of themselves. And all of a sudden everybody in the room went,
never thought about it that way.
You have to really ask people and find out what their outcome really is. You really do, because you can really waste an awful lot of energy if somebody's outcome is more hidden and you just didn't ask, what is it you really want? Often I'll ask people when they're frustrated, am I helping you quit or am I helping you move through? Which one am I doing?
Whoo! You gotta say that again. Am I helping you quit?
Right? When people
or am I
call
helping
me,
you move on?
Exactly. When people will call me and they'll start with usually a long, Artemis, you got to understand and, all these different things. And I'll usually ask a defining question because I'm here to assist you with where you want to head. So oftentimes I'll say, Jerry, you came here and you said that you wanted to really be able to free your wife. And then you were hoping that within maybe 5 to 7 years, you actually could be out of your job too. Have you changed your goals or are you just frustrated with your approach? Okay. Cause if you've changed your goals and you're wanting me to help you quit, then, here's how you can do that. Or if you're just really at a place where you're frustrated trying to do it your way and now you really want me to say, okay, here's a strategy change for you, then I'll help you there. So am I helping you quit or am I helping you move through? Wow.
And because of another thing you say is that people will grow if they are committed to. Whatever they're committed to, they will grow in that direction. So if they're committed to quitting, they're going to grow into that direction. If they're committed to, learning and excelling, they're going to grow in that particular direction, right?
Exactly. I just said to a young lady recently, I said, you know what? If you think it's easier over somewhere else, I think you should go there because the journey is the journey. And if you think it's easier somewhere else, then that's the place you'll actually probably commit to the journey.
Wow.
If you think that the grass is greener somewhere, you're not likely to commit to the journey because you're going to think all the tough stuff is just because you're in one place. And really it's important that people understand the journey here is the journey. I don't care what your company is. I don't care what your products are. The idea of growing to a place of leadership where you are internally motivated instead of externally drawn is a very huge distinction. And that is the same no matter what your company name is or no matter what your product is. You can't get around that.
That is something else. So you talk about the 3 different states that people are in. I want to make sure people get this from the segment that you just shared is that they're either, learning something, number 1, or number 2, they're watching it to teach it.
Exactly.
Or number 3, they're teaching it.
That's it.
Right? That's
and that
powerful.
Throughout your whole business, because it's a business of duplication, way too many people watch something and then they go, I've got it. I'm leaving now. I'm like, hold on. That's great in regular business. But in a business of duplication, you better learn it. You better watch it to teach it, and then you better be teaching it, or there will be no duplication. And so many people, Jerry, is that not the number one thing you hear they complain of?
Right.
I've got it, but I can't get anyone else to do it. There's a huge difference between you and I learning it and you and I being able to duplicate it. And that's the secret right in there.
Wow. And that kind of ties into the different levels and so forth. You're talking about level 1 is being competent and showing up, even when you don't want to show up.
There we go.
Level 2 is being competent in proficiencies such as prospecting. Level 3 is being competent in a proficiency like following up. So we want to get competent in these particular areas, but if we don't get competent in the first area, we're not going to ever get competent in the second and third areas, which are areas that assist us in producing volume and producing bonus checks. And most people don't get the bonus checks because they just simply never even got proficient in showing up.
Exactly.
When they don't feel like showing up, which is probably going to be most of the time.
And that goes back to your saying, the successful people are committed to results. Unsuccessful people are committed to comfort. And that's got to be the number one thing. I mean, ask people all the time, how often would you have showed up at your job if when the alarm went off, you said, do I feel like going? You never asked yourself that. And in free enterprise, your work ethic has to be a step above. If you really realize that the kind of thinking and the way you're showing up in your free enterprise would get you fired on a job, then you have to know you're not even close to driving this business. The work ethic in free enterprise has to be above whatever you thought. I don't know why so many of us think it's below that, but your work ethic here is above that. That's
powerful. Well, you know what? We showed up on this disc, and let's test everyone to see if they're going to show up on the next one.
There we go. Let's do it.
That's a little test, huh? All right. You guys ready for the test? Okay. All right. We'll see you on the next one. That's, if of course you can show up.